Hello, Grandpa here. Got another book, and it's cold, windy, first day of spring. So I'm inside reading today. Anyway, the book I have, tickle my nose, is Flik the Inventor. If you can see that. And Flik looked like he's an ant. Anyway, well, I guess we'll see what he invents. Anyway, here you go. Flik the Inventor. It's Flik. This is a previously loved book. Somebody's colored crayon in it. It says Princess Dot and some of the blueberries stood outside Flik's room in the anthill. Pop, whiz, gulp came the noise from inside. As always, Flik was trying to invent something to help the ant colony. Maybe we should ask him if he needs help, Dot suggested. But before anyone could answer, there was a loud thump. Flik bounced out of the room, landing at Dot's feet. Flik muttered as he stood up and brushed himself off. The flinging mechanism must be too tight. Flik was so deep in thought he didn't even notice Dot and her friends. He marched right past them and back into his room. "Well," said Dot, "at least we know he's okay." The next morning, Dot saw Flik at the edge of the field with a funny-looking machine. "Hi, Flik," said Dot. "What you working on?" "Oh, hello, Princess," said Flik. He smiled happily. "This is my pickup and mover machine." "How does it work?" asked Dot. "Here, let me show you," Flik said as he helped Dot up onto a rock. Then he started his machine. Soon an arm on the machine reached out and grabbed Dot. "That tickles," she said, giggling. Suddenly Dot felt herself being lifted into the air. Ooh, this might be dangerous. A moment later she landed safely on the ground. "Whee!" cried Dot. "Look how far I moved." "Excellent," Flik said. "I'm glad I adjusted that flinging mechanism. Otherwise you might have ended up on the other side of the ant island." Just then, Thorny appeared. "Flik," Thorny said, "why aren't you collecting food with the rest of the worker ants?" "Hello, Thorny. I was hoping you'd ask me that very question," Flik replied. "You see, I have invented a new machine. Would you like to see how it works?" I think this is Flik, and that's Thorny. He doesn't look very happy. Thorny was angry. We don't have time for all the silly inventions. There's work to be done. We need to collect food. "But," Flik tried to explain, "just get to work like the other ants," Thorny called as he stomped away. Flik hung his head. Thorny's kind of a bully in a way, it sounds like. Maybe he's the boss. "Don't worry, Flik," Dot said. "You'll figure out some way to use your invention. I just know it." "Yeah, it must be a good for something, but what?" Flik said to Dot as he walked out to the field to work. Later that night, Flik sat in his room, trying to think of a useful invention. Suddenly he got an idea. He worked deep into the night. Early the next morning, Dot found Flik outside looking intensely at a large stalk. "Flik," she said, "you'd better get out into the field with the other ants. Thorny's been looking for you." Sure I will, Dot, Flik said, but wouldn't you like to see my latest invention first? It's a stock chopper. Flik, you're going to get in trouble, Dot warned. You're supposed to be collecting food. Yes, yes, Flik said. I will. Right after I try this out. Stand back, Princess. Flik started up his machine and set to work. There he is. Looks like he's chopping a stalk with it. Moments later, the stalk was chopped nearly in half. Ah, Flik cried. It worked. How do you like that, Princess? But Dot didn't answer. Thorny did. Oh, there he is again. How many times do I have to tell you there's work to be done? Cried Thorny. But Thorny, Flik said, look at this. It's my new stock chopping machine. He didn't have time for this, Thorny insisted, but I'm sure, Flik began. We don't need to chop stalks. We need to collect food, Thorny told him. Flik's antennas dropped as he walked out to the field to join the other worker ants. That's all Thorny thinks about, harvesting food, Flik mumbled to himself. Flik's all sad. Then Flik stopped short. That's what we need, he cried. A harvester, a machine to collect food. Flik turned around and raced back to his room. He looked at his pickup and mover machine. Then he looked at his stock chopping machine. What would happen if I combined them? Flik thought out loud. I guess there's only one way to find out. The following morning, with his new invention strapped to his back, Flik headed towards the fields. He smiled as he watched two ant children run past him playing tag. Then he waved to some workers collecting food. Flik sighed happily. He knew that his invention would save the worker ants hours of working time. In fact, Flik thought he might become something of a hero. Flik tried to get Thorny's attention, but Thorny was too busy talking to Princess Eta, and Princess Dot was nowhere to be found. Flik, one of the worker ants called out. What crazy thing do you invent this time? Ha ha ha, the other ants laughed too. That Flik, one said. He's always thinking up some useless stuff. But Flik didn't mind the other ants teasing. He was busy starting up his machine. Then he cut down a stalk. Moments later, the flinging mechanism launched dozens of pieces of grain into a basket. Flik's machine worked. Ooh, look at that, all that food in a basket. Hey, cried one worker, that's your pickup and mover machine. That's right, Flik said proudly. And it's connected to your stock chopping machine, said another ant. Uh-huh, Flik replied. Wow, shouted the worker ants. They're all impressed now. Yep, I put them together and made a harvester, Flik explains. Now one ant can collect as much food as a whole bunch of ants put together. Hooray! Cried the other ants. 3 cheers for Flik. Flik grinned. He had done it. He had finally created a really useful machine. Man, look at all the food that he's harvesting. Dear Blueberry Journal. Boy, the worker ants sure do work hard. Just a few of them collected enough food for the entire ant colony to survive winter. Sometimes the needs are already on the ground and the workers pick them up and carry them away in their mouths. Other times they have to cut the seeds off the grasses and weeds before they can take them. Now that we have Flik's harvester, everyone can gather seeds faster and more easily. Then all the worker ants have to do is carry them inside the nest to keep them dry. Hooray! More time to play. Till next time, Dot. Well, there you have it. Flik the Inventor. I think Flik's more than an inventor. He's an engineer too. Engineers kind of come up with good ideas and they figure out how to do things. They find a problem and then they find a way to solve that problem through mechanical means a lot of times. That's where a lot of things have been invented, is there was something that just wasn't working very well, so somebody came up with a better idea of how to do it. Instead of doing manual labor, you found out how to get a machine to do the work for you. Anyway, so I'm thinking Flik is an inventor and an engineer. So there you have it. Anyway, as always, Grandpa liked that story. I'm sure you did too. Anyway, until next time, don't forget, Grandpa loves you. Bye for now.